So in this series, I'm going to teach you Python programming from scratch. And I'm going to do two things that are different from most programming tutorial series on YouTube right now. The first is I'm going to assume you know nothing. I'm not joking. I'm going to explain everything to the point where I might even annoy you with how much I over-explain something. So hopefully, to be fair, hopefully I'll find the right balance. But the second thing I'm going to do also is I'm going to teach you through examples. So what I'll do is I'll teach you a Python programming concept, and then I'll give you an exercise, and then you can pause the video and give that a try. And what we'll do is after you've given that a try, we'll work through it together. Of course, the whole reason why I'm here is to teach you programming. So if the exercise isn't something that you find that you can work on and you find it a bit difficult, that's fine. It's all right. What we'll do is go through it together, and then by the end of the video, you're going to be pretty comfortable. By the end of this series, I'm going to crunch down more than 10 years of what I learned programming into this series. And by the way, one other thing I want to mention is I'm going to teach you Python programming, but I'm also going to teach you. I'm going to, the reason why you've got my face in the bottom right corner is so that you can sort of see how I think, my expressions, and I'm going to here and there jot down all of the things that I've learned programming for more than 10 years in that journey. And so hopefully you get more than just Python programming too. You get all of that added insight and benefit. So with that said, let's get started. So like most things these days, we always start with Google. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in REPL IT. We're going to go to this website. Now, with Python programming, when it comes to writing Python code and running that Python code, to do that, you can install Python on your machine. So you can install it if you're running Windows, you install it on your Windows machine, and if you're running Mac, you install it on your Mac. Now, that installation can be a bit messy. There's a lot of faffing around. Sometimes things don't work, and when you're starting to learn to code, you want to reduce I've always believed that you want to reduce as many barriers as possible especially when you start learning something, because you want to get going pretty quickly. So for that reason, what we're going to do is we're going to code online, and we're going to use this really cool website called REPL IT. And essentially, it's a collaborative in-browser IDE. So a lot of jargon. IDE just stands for Integrated Development Environment. And really, it's just a place where you can write and run Python code. So all you need to do is click Start Coding. And then I really do like this drop down, by the way. It's quite nice. And Python, of course, is number one because it is the world's most popular programming language. Fun fact. Cool. REPL has now been created. And they've given me a really lovely anonymous name /Rusty Artistic Graduate. I'll take that. Cool. So a few things that we're going to do to get set up. So there's a few things going on here. The first is on the left-hand side, we've got the options. We're going to click the settings one in a second. I'm going to make this a bit bigger so you can see. The second thing is we've got a list of files. So Python projects. So a Python program can consist of one file or more than one file. And Python programs, the way you indicate that a file is a Python program is you usually name it something and then you put .py at the end. That tells your machine, in this case REPL, that this is a Python file, and so we want to run it as Python code. So here's the list of files. Because this tutorial is going to be quite straightforward, we're just gonna have one Python file. And to be fair, for the most of the series, we're going to have one Python file. In future Python projects, you might have more than one Python file. You might have other files too. So that's worth bearing in mind. But for now, we're just going to collapse that. Let's get rid of that. So we're just going to have these two windows. I did that by dragging, by the way. So here you have your main file. Now this is the editor area. This is where you type Python code. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly jot to the settings. And you get this pop-up. This theme, I just want to change a few things. So the first is I'm going to make the font size quite huge, so that way you can see it. Second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the indent type to tabs and set the indent size to 4. This tab and indent size, ignore those for now. Don't worry about those for now. I'll explain indentation later on in another video in the series. But for now, don't worry too much about them. Just have the same settings as me for those. The second thing, the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set code intelligence as disabled, because we are intelligent and we don't need any help at the beginning when we want to learn, or as we're starting to learn. So cool. So those are the settings. Now this text is bigger now, which is quite cool. Unfortunately, there isn't a way to make this text bigger. So REPL, you really, if you are watching, you do need to make that bigger, please, because yeah, it's quite small. Do let me know if in the comments if that is an issue. Hopefully it's not too big of an issue. But yeah, do let me know if it is. Right. So now that we understand what this this area is, this is where we write a Python code. We're going to write a Python code in a second there. This area is where you actually see the results of your program. So when I click run, so when I write the code here and I click this run button, what will happen is the Python program will be run, and the results from that program are going to be printed here. So for example, if I write some code to print out, your name onto the screen, which we are going to do in a second, that's going to be printed out here. So this is our run area, if you'd like. So for the most part, we're going to be doing a lot of work here. And then when it comes to checking our program or the results of whether or not our program will run correctly and seeing what it outputs, we're going to see the results of that here. Cool. So with that said, the first thing I'm going to do is the first thing that every programmer does when they first learn how to program, and that is print something out onto the screen. So what we want to do is we want to write some code that prints out something here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start off by writing the word print, and that is Python code right there. I'm being serious, right? So what you do, that is Python code right there. That's telling Python, hey, I want to print out something onto the screen. And then what you have is the brackets. And the idea is that anything you want to print out onto the screen, put it inside these brackets, right? So I can't do something like this, right? Python's going to be like, hey, what's that? I don't recognize what that is. So I'm going to, let's fix that. Let's put print. What you have to do is use the brackets. And in there, that's where you put something that you want to print out onto the screen. Now, there's so many things that you can print out onto the screen. Typically, every programmer starts with hello world. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it even more simpler. I'm going to print out the number of subscribers that I have right now. I have 2,470 something. I think 2,479. Please, if you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe. But I have 2,479 subscribers last time I checked. So I want to print out that number onto the screen. And so to do that, so that's legitimate Python code. We've written the print command, put the brackets there, put the number inside, and that's good to go. So we're going to give that a run. And fabulous, you can see 2479 has been printed out onto the screen. Now the cool thing about Python is you can do other things, like in this print expression, we call it expression, which is just, the thing that's going to be run. It's like in maths you had an expression like 10 plus 10, that's a mathematical expression. This is a programming expression, it's a programming statement. In programming, they're used synonymously, so someone who says a line of code, a statement, an expression, these all mean the same thing, so it's worth just knowing that. So here in this, instead of printing out 2479, I can do some more fun things. I can type in 10 plus 15, right? Now, 10 slash, that looks weird, right? But actually, if I run this, Python's pretty cool. It'll actually print out the result of whatever's inside here, right? Which is pretty cool. So I can actually type expressions in here. So that's quite handy. So I can type 10 times, I don't know, 1,000. Let's give that a run. And you'd expect, of course, 10,000. So that's cool. So that's how you print out numbers onto the screen. So the next thing I want to do is, how can you go about printing out your name onto the screen, right? Now, it's quite simple. You'd probably think I can type out my name. So I can type out my name. If I type out my name like that, that's not going to run. Let's see what happens when I actually give that a run. Python's going to be like, hey, syntax error. You've got, it's a big error. The reason why is you've got invalid syntax. And the reason why is Python doesn't understand what this is, right? If you actually look at it, right, it's some text, but Python doesn't know it's text. Python thinks it's like this print keyword. In Python, this is called a dedicated keyword. Python understands what this is. It's built into the programming language. When it sees your name, or as I've written my name here, it sees Imdad. It's like, wait, I don't have a dedicated keyword called imdad built into my programming language. What are you trying to do? And it's the same with add, right? The way but what we want to do is we just want to print out the name onto the screen. And so to do that, you need to tell Python that this is it's a string. And a string is just a technical term for a bunch of characters, a bunch of alphabetical characters. So to do that, what we need to do is we need to put this inside a single quote. You can also put this in double quotes. So I could also do that. That's perfectly fine. That tells Python, hey, this is some text that we want to print out onto the screen. It's a string. I'm going to use single quotes because I like single quotes, and for the most part you tend to use single quotes in Python. So I'm going to print out my name, and I should probably capitalize my name and give that a run. And fabulous, now my name has been printed out onto the screen, which is perfect. So now we've learned how to print out a number onto the screen, how to print out some text onto the screen. So the first challenge I want to present you with is I'm going to ask you to let's print out 10 plus 50. Now let's make this 18 times 636 onto the screen. Now I want you to give pause this video, give that a try, and then hopefully you'll get the result, and then we can go through that in a second. So if you pause the video and you gave that a try, then you would have seen this, or hopefully you would have written that, which is 18 times 636. Now, by the way, you can put spaces are nice. It makes it more readable. Python treats it as the same, just bearing in mind, so that's worth knowing. And so if I type 18 times 636, it prints out 11,448. So fantastic. So hopefully you got that. Cool. Cool. So let's move on. Now, as you can probably tell, you're like, wait, what is this here? You wrote this without explaining what it is, and I am going to explain what it is now. And this is what's known as a comment. Now, a comment in Python is a really easy way to be able to tell Python when you run the program, you know, I don't want to print this out. I don't want to run this statement, this line of code. I don't want to run it when I run my Python program. I want it to be ignored. You know, this is a statement here that we want to print out my full name onto the screen. And I don't want that to be ignored, right? You want to run that. But in this case, this one, I want it to be ignored. I don't want it to be run. I just want it to be there so we can see it. And to achieve that, you use what's known in this case as a comment. This is a comment in Python. In other languages, you have different ways of writing comments, but essentially you put a pound sign, I say pound sign, hash sign, and then you write a comment. Again, you can use, you can leave the space, but it's always nice to put spaces. It makes it more readable. And here you just put some code, and you can trust that Python, when it comes to running the program, will not run this line of code, which is fantastic. And you can have a lot of comments. I can say print my name, or comment 3 and comment 4. You can go on all day, and comments are a really nice way to be able to explain what your program does to anyone that's reading your program. Cool. Now that we've learned about comments, I want to go back a second to what we have, this line here, right? Now I mentioned Python needs to know that this is a string. It's a sequence of alphabetical characters. And Python needs to know that, and it needs to know that because it needs to know it's different from that, right? That's a number, and that's a string. Now, what do we call this? You know, I'm using string and number. In Python, we refer to these, and other programming languages, you refer to these as data types. This is to say that whatever inside this print bracket, this number 10 is of a type. It has a certain type associated with it, and that type is a number. To be fair, what I can do is, just to make this even nicer, I'll do that. Oh no, I don't want to do that. Data types. And then, so that 10 is a number. So its data type is a number. And this string, its data type is a string. Now there are more data types in Python. We won't go through them now. We'll go through them in future videos. But it's important to know that right now, as it stands, these are two data types in Python. So one is a string and one is, of course, a number. So hopefully that makes sense. Do let me know in comments if that's confusing. Right, so the last thing that we're going to cover in this video is variables. Now, variables, I actually made a TikTok about this quite recently, and it kind of it went a bit viral. So I'll put the link in the description below. But essentially, a variable, I explained on the TikTok that a variable is like a box. So I'm going to type the word variables. So variables are a variable. A variable is like a box. Now, a variable is like a box in the sense that you have a box and it can either be empty or it can have something inside. And the reason why you'd want to use variables in your programs is because you might want to store something and then you might want to use it later on in your program. So what are examples of this? It can be anything from someone's bank account balance to your someone's first name to, I don't know, how many items they have in their shopping cart if they're doing online shopping. There are so many instances where you want to be able to store pieces of data and then use them later on in your program. So I'll give you an example of a variable. I'll show you how to declare a variable. You know, programmers use a word called declare in their programs. Right, so in the last part of this video, I'm going to explain what variables are. I'm going to just type that out. So variables, I actually made a TikTok recently, and I put the link in the description below. It went a bit viral, and essentially I explained what variables were through the notion of a box, right? I don't have a box, well, I have a box somewhere here, but I can't get it now. But a box essentially can either be empty or it can store something, right? Usually you have something inside a box. And a variable's exactly the same in that you have something that you want to store and you want to access or you want to get later on. So what are examples of this in our program? Well, one example is you might want to store a user's bank balance. Or maybe you want to store how many items they have in their shopping cart. Or maybe you want to store someone's first name, right? These are all cases where you want to have a variable. You want to store some data so that later on in your program, you can then refer to that data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how you can declare a variable in Python. Now, I use the word declare here. In programming, declare essentially means how you create, but it's like a programming terminology that's often used. People say, I'm going to declare my variables this. I don't actually know where it came from. I'm quite curious. Maybe it's like a, who knows? Anyways, I'm going to declare my variable and I'm going to call my variable first name, right? Now, to declare a variable, what you need to do is you call it something, right? I'm going to call my variable first name, right? I can call it first name like this. I can call it first name like that, right? This is casing. You can have different casing. I'm going to keep it lowercase. In Python, you tend to keep it lowercase for the most part. And so I'm going to have a variable called first name, right? This is telling Python that I'm going to create a new keyword, a new variable, right? And then what you need to do to be able to then put something into that variable, you need to use two more things. So the first is put an equal sign. So that's quite straightforward. So you have the variable name, you put an equal sign, and now the magic. What do you want to put inside this variable? And this is exactly what we want it to do with the variable. So to put something inside this variable, I'm going to type in the value. So this is the variable itself, and this is the value, the thing I want to put inside the variable. I'm going to type in imdad because that is my first name. You can, of course, type your name if you're following along with the tutorial. And that's it, right? So essentially, a variable is a placeholder, somewhere where you store data so that you can access it later on. So to declare a variable in Python, you write out the name of the variable, the thing you want to call it, right? And I sort of said you can, you can call a variable, you can call it whatever you want, you can case it however you want. But in this case, I'm just keeping it lowercase. You put the equal sign to tell Python, okay, I'm going to set this variable equal to something. I'm going to say equal to some value. And in this case, I'm saying it equal to my first name. And that's again wrapped in single quotes to indicate to Python that this is a string of the data type string, right? Now, the whole reason why we declare variables is so that we can use them later in our programs. So how do we actually use this thing? Well, one way we can use it is we can actually print out the value. We can actually print out this variable, you know. And to do that, all you have to do, as you can probably guess, actually, I'm going to make this an exercise. Pause the video. Right now, I want you to print out. So I want you to declare the variable above, declare the first name variable. I'm going to say exercise. Declare the first name variable, and then print out the contents, or print out the variable contents onto the screen. So by the end of this program, what we want is we want to print out, we want to see when we run the program, we want to see imdad being printed out onto the screen, right? So give that a pause, and then give that a try. Cool. So now you've probably come back. So you should essentially, to print out this variable, all we need to do, so what I'm going to do is to make this, I'm going to make this the exercise. I'm going to put, you should have declared a variable called first name as we did before. So that was given to you. And the next line of code is print, as you can guess. And what you would have hopefully done is put first name in between the brackets. And then if I give that a run, of course, these are being printed out. I'm actually going to comment them out. And to, by the way, to comment these two out, you can type command, you can hold command and tap slash. So again, I'm going to do that, command /. It comments code and it uncomments it. And it's quite a handy shortcut that you can use to comment out code. So I'm going to comment this code out. And again, commenting out code means it's not going to be run. And so if I run that, you can see imdad is printed out onto the screen. Because this is the code that's run. Although this is color coded, it's quite confusing, so I'm just going to get rid of that just to be absolutely clear. But essentially, again, so what we wanted to do, we declared the first name variable and set it equal to imdad, and then we wanted to print out the variable contents onto the screen, and we did that by printing out first name onto the screen. And as you can see, first name should print it out onto the screen. So I'm going to conclude the tutorial now with an exercise, right? So I'm going to type out the exercise. And that is, I want you to write a program, so write program that prints out, that stores someone's first name and surname and prints it out onto the screen, right? So just go over this, write a program that stores someone's first name as a variable, stores someone's surname as a variable, and then prints them both, prints them both out onto the screen, right? Now, give that a try. And what I'll do is, once you've given that a try, feel free to post it as a comment in the description. Feel free to post that as a comment in the video below. And what I'll do is I'll let you know if it's correct. But what we'll do is, even if you don't do that, don't worry about it, because in the next tutorial, at the beginning, what I'll do is I'll go over the solution so we can go through it together. But yeah, feel free to post it in the comments below if you're feeling a bit eager and energetic. Post it in the comments below, and I'll take a look at it and I'll reply to it. So I'll give you a mini code review. So yeah. With that said, I'm going to conclude the tutorial now. So thanks again for watching. Please do click the thumbs up button if you did enjoy the tutorial. And I'm going to post the next tutorial pretty soon. So make sure you click the subscribe button and tap the bell icon. So as soon as I post it, you'll be notified once it's uploaded. So thanks again for watching. Do let me know if you have any feedback. By the way, everything from the audio to seeing my face, probably my haircut, although I can't do much about it because of lockdown. But yeah, if there's anything that you want to see differently, or maybe I spoke too fast, do let me know. This is the first video and I want to make them progressively better for all of you in this series. So thanks a lot for watching. Have a lovely day and see you later.